Hey there! So some people like contained stories, standalone books. You read it and then you just move on to something new. But some of us also really enjoy series. And the great thing about series is that there really are no rules. However, there are different structures that you will probably notice in different series, both in books and movies. But I'm focusing on books because I am a book person. First of all, you have your series that follow one character primarily, and the whole series tells a story. There's of course a conflict in each book, but really you're looking at the overall story. And a great example of that is Marie Lu's The Young Elites. We're primarily focusing on Annalena, and it's her journey, and each book is a different part of that, but you're primarily in her head and kind of learning how it is for our anti-hero. She's not necessarily one you would root for. In fact, she has been blessed or cursed with these powers as a result of a childhood sickness, and she's basically choosing to use them for evil. It's primarily about her, and we're following her. That's kind of a classic series structure. You're going to see a lot in mystery books and even like crime TV shows that they tend to follow something a little bit different, not always, but sometimes, of having one core group of characters solving mysteries or puzzles together. And that can be true for a favorite among students, Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library. In book one, you have the infamous Mr. Lemoncello, who is a game designer, and he has recently designed the town library as a sort of maze, riddle, puzzle extravaganza. The story doesn't have to end here. If you want, you can read the other books in the series, and you don't necessarily have to read them in order. In this case, it's usually a good idea to read book one first, just so you sort of know who people are and what's going on, and then over and over again, they're working together. And if you do read them in order, you'll see some growth for sure, and there may be some underlining stories going on there, but actually, the people solving the mystery aren't as important as the mystery itself. A third one is one that I'm a particular fan of, and this is when an author decides to have multiple points of view, multiple characters telling the story over the course of different books, but each book has a different primary narrator. And a great example of this is also this great epic fantasy Witchlands series by Susan Dennard. So in this first book, Truth Witch, you're primarily following a girl named Safi, and it's about her and her best friend Isolde, and they have different kinds of witching powers, and they are bonded, and it's primarily Safi's story. But then in book two, you are still getting Safi's story, you're still getting those different points of view, but it's primarily about our Wind Witch, who is Prince Merrick. And then finally in book three, you still have Safi, you still have Isolde, you still have Merrick, but then you also have Aedwin, who is a Blood Witch. But it's a great example of how you can keep building your cast of characters and adding points of view, but still, this is Aedwin's book. Like, it is primarily about him. So that's another structure that can be used, and it's fun to get into different people's heads. And finally, another one that I'm a real big fan of is called companion novels, which is when writers choose to have different books all taking place in the same place, generally the same setting, and sometimes characters from previous books will show up as secondary or background characters in whatever book you're reading now. So a great example of that is Miranda Keenly. This is her 100 Oaks series, in the sense that she has this whole line of books that take place in the fictional town of 100 Oaks, but you really don't have to read them in order. This is book one, which I've had on my shelf for years. I've never read it, but I have read so many of the other books in this series, but I already know who Jordan is. She is the quarterback for the football team, I believe. And anyway, I already know everything that's going to happen to her because I've read a bunch of the other books, but if I read this one, I would know much better what's going on. Another author that is a great example of that is Sarah Dessen, where she doesn't consider her books companions so much as she includes what they call Easter eggs, little things for her fans to look out for when they're reading her novels, because she'll do like callbacks to books past. So there's no right or wrong way to write a series, and there's so many different options. They exist in every genre. It's just a matter of doing some exploring and finding what's right for you. That's it for me for now. Take care. Bye!